we read that one thing Jesus did a lot was pray. He was praying when he was baptized. We read in the Bible, and as he was praying, heaven was opened and the Holy Spirit came on him in bodily form like a dove. And it's only in Luke that Jesus was praying when he was choosing his disciples. Jesus spent the night praying to God, Luke 6 says. And when morning came, he called his disciples and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated as apostles. And it's only in Luke that Jesus was praying when Peter made his confession. We read in Luke chapter 9, once when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do crowds say that I am?" And it's only in Luke that he was praying when he went up the mountain called the Transfiguration. As he was praying, it says, his face changed, and his clothes became bright as a flash of lightning. And it's only in Luke that his disciples come to him and say, "Lord, teach us how to pray." Jesus did not invent prayer. Jesus was not the first one who ever prayed. If we read in the Old Testament, many of the people, most of them that we read about in the Old Testament prayed. Solomon prayed, Daniel, Hannah, David, Abraham, Isaac, Jonah, Jacob, Moses, Hezekiah, Samson, all these people, we read in their stories in the Old Testament, and they were always praying. That Jesus prayed shouldn't surprise us. Even though his disciples obviously didn't know how to pray because they asked Jesus to teach them, Jesus did pray, and he taught his disciples how to pray. And Jesus, when his disciples asked him, Jesus gave them a form of how to pray. Do you remember what that form says? Jesus said, "When you pray, say, 'Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done.'" You know that prayer? We know it as the Lord's Prayer. That's how Jesus taught his disciples how to pray. And Jesus also said to the people, you know, when you pray, just don't stand there and babble away and try and get people to see how important you are because you're using such nice words and such powerful language. He says, no, he says, even pagans pray like that. When you pray, go into a room by yourself. Nobody has to see you. And when you're all alone, come to God in prayer. And we need to remember about prayer because that's what Jesus is teaching us in this story that we just read. He says, suppose one of you has a friend. And that's a very strong beginning. When he said it that way, all the disciples and anybody who was listening would all of a sudden perk up. And they say, oh, the way Jesus is starting, that means this is very, very important. So we better listen. And really, when Jesus says, suppose one of you has, what he's really saying is, which one of you? He's asking a question, and to that question, there's only one of two answers. Which one of you has a friend and he goes to him at midnight and says, friend, give me 3 loaves of bread? And the way most people would answer that and say, nobody. Nobody. All my friends know that when the lights are out, I'm asleep and they don't knock on my door. And the other way to you can answer that question is everybody. When he said, suppose one of you has a son and he falls into a well on the Sabbath, which one of you would not pull him out? How would the people answer that question? Everybody would. Of course, that's what you do. Even if it was a lamb or an ox. If somebody is in danger, you help them. Everybody would do that. And then he said at another time, he says, which one of you, if you want to build a tower or if you want to build a house, which one of you doesn't first sit down and figure out how much it's going to cost, and then look and see if he has that money in the bank? And what would the people answer? What would they say? They would say, yeah, everybody would do that. Nobody is dumb enough to start building a house and not knowing if they have enough money to find it. Which one of you can you imagine anybody doing this? And you would either answer everybody or nobody. And Jesus does that here too. Jesus is starting the same way. He says, can you imagine having a friend and going to that friend at midnight and say, lend me 3 loaves of bread because a friend of mine has come to my house and I don't have anything to give him to eat? Can you imagine doing that? The people would immediately answer, well, how would you and I answer that? Pretend you're in bed and you're fast asleep and it's in the middle of the night and somebody knocks on your door and says, hey, I need to borrow some sugar. Can you get me some sugar? What would we say?
Go away.
I'd say, go away, come again in the morning. I'm asleep, don't bother me. But when Jesus says, suppose one of you has a friend and he comes to you at midnight and your whole family is asleep and he says, I need 3 loaves of bread. They, of course, looked at Jesus and said, well, yeah, of course, everybody would wake up. Everybody would walk over their kids and give them 3 loaves of bread and give it to them and say, here you are, have a good night, and then go back to sleep. See, it doesn't make sense to us. But it made sense in Jesus' day. Nobody, absolutely nobody, would ever say to a person like that, go away, don't bother me, come back in the morning. I get up at 8 o'clock, the kids get up at 8 o'clock, that's when you can come back. Nobody would say that. They would all say, sure, just a minute, I'm coming. But that's really not how you and I would answer, would it? If somebody knocked on my door and said, hey, friends of mine just came by and I don't have anything to eat, can you give me a couple of loaves of bread and some peanut butter? You know what I'd say? I'd say, go away, McDonald's is open 24 hours a day. You can go through the drive-thru and you can get all kinds of food. Just don't bother me. That's what I would say. And I'd say most people today would say that. We can imagine that someone, and ourselves too, would just tell this person just to go away, don't bother me now. But that was not true in Jesus' day, and now we have to ask why. And Jesus gives us 2 important reasons. We need to notice those. Remember, the man says to his friend in the house, friend, loan me, let me borrow 3 loaves of bread. 3 loaves of bread, because a friend on a journey has come to me.